it may, and if you think that Emmanuel Macron appointed a member of LR, M. Barnier, then the centre-right, M. Bayrou, then his own party, M. Le Cornu, the only side that he hasn't tested yet is the left. So maybe it is a strategy for him to say, they're going to come to power, I'm going to appoint one of them, and they're going to fail because the country and the National Assembly is in such a state today that it's going to be extremely difficult for anybody who comes at the head of a government to actually do anything when you know the deficit and the debt that we have, the savings that have to be made, and anybody coming into power now will have extremely little leeway to actually do anything. And if the left was indeed appointed, they would be expected to move towards social issues and societal issues and so on. And in fact, they just don't have the means to do so.
So you sound like you prefer a dissolution of parliament.
Well, as a senator, it's easier for me to say because I know from having news from what's happening today in the National Assembly that, of course, most of the MPs there are not in favor of that because most of them feel that they may actually lose their seats. Also, that, and that's the most difficult part, that the Rassemblement National will come back in big numbers, and therefore that Emmanuel Macron will be forced to nominate M. Bardella or Madame Le Pen, indeed, because she's not campaigning. I mean, she cannot run for election. One has forgotten that. So what she's doing
she's
there... She's
appealing for the time being her, her conviction on corruption charges.
Maybe so, but... At the moment, she cannot actually run for election if there is one. So, of course, she could be appointed to Matignon because the president doesn't have to appoint an MP. So she's quite, it's quite possible. So I don't know whether he will do that. And a lot of MPs today are not really happy with that scenario that M. Bardella or Madame Le Pen will actually end up being in as prime minister. But, the situation is absolutely chaotic because the LR party today is in disarray. Some attempted to join the Rassemblement National to save their seats or feel that, their future lies there. The center-right is exploding where past ministers or prime ministers asking for the president to resign, then M. Attal saying, that he doesn't recognize the president anymore. I mean, they're actually leaving the boat. And then the left is trying to hold together, but you see the tensions there. So, I mean, that is the political scene today, and it's quite chaotic.
Yeah.
Well, there is a major crack, yes, indeed. And just talking to my colleagues from the Les Républicains party today, some of them are extremely uneasy with Mr. Retailleau's position. But as I was saying earlier, there is this temptation for some of them to feel that their political future may reside indeed on the far right of what they have been defending so far. Others who are true Republicans indeed will stay, but I think what
because Les Républicains is an interesting party. It's got the presidency of the Senate.
Yes.
But in the lower house of Parliament, this is the former. Again, this is the used to be the Gaullist party. It was one of the biggest parties in France. Now it's reduced to 50 seats out of 577
in the National Assembly. But it is the majority party in the Senate. So when we have, a text going from the National Assembly to the Senate, indeed, so, well, for the past 8 years, it is Les Républicains who decided really on the last text or the amendments and so on that will come out of it. No, I see an implosion of that party taking place now. And this is very sad because, indeed, if we are to go back, and I feel it is the case, to having a right-wing vision of society and left-wing vision and, having this democratic debate that is very healthy, that we can get ideas out of each other rather than having this kind of middle, what Emmanuel Macron wanted, this kind of model thing that, people don't recognize themselves in. We will not have a right-wing party. We're going to have the extreme right populist, and I think the comparison with Italy doesn't stand there because Madame Meloni doesn't have Monsieur Le Pen, Jean-Marie Le Pen, as a father. I mean, it's not the same history. It's not, the Le Pen family, it is the firm, and we know where they come from, we know what they stand for, and even though now they're extremely good at communication, which is the case of most of the parties, and indeed they rely very heavily, and that was extremely well presented.
Thank you.
On social networks today. They're extremely active. Look at TikTok. The last election, when I asked a young group of voters in my village who they had voted for, they said, "Oh, for him." And I said, "Do you know who he is?" It was Monsieur Bardella. And they said, "Why did you vote for him?" Because he, is extremely good and he's good looking,
He talks well.
And he talks well. It may be an empty shell. Sorry for that, but it is. No, it is true.
So let me ask you, Philippe.
So it's a nice shell to look at from outside. Well, it's going to be a very blunt answer, but the answer is no. Emmanuel Macron was never elected at any level in France. When you look at all the various presidents that we've mentioned, that we've seen, they were all elected as mayor for Nicolas Sarkozy, for President Chirac, the same with François Mitterrand, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing. If you look at all of them, they actually understood France. They spent days and months of their lives in political meetings, listening to people, trying to get the vibes and be interested in people. And I'm not sure that Emmanuel Macron, I'm going to be incredibly harsh, but I'm not sure that Emmanuel Macron is actually interested in people. I think he has great ideas, that he is well capable of having far-fetched theories. He's a true believer.
He was re-elected, though.
Well, elected as president.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that if you look at the past of all the other presidents, they knew France intimately, which Emmanuel Macron does or did not.
Because this is a moment.
The first time, simply because his professional career was never linked to politics. He was called to the Élysée to work indeed as Secrétaire Général Adjoint. But that's all. But it's not just because you observe ministers, having a meeting around the table, that you actually understand politics. You do not.
And you got that sense when you met him. When you met him back then.
He's missing, and plus the fact that he was much younger than any of the others as well. But maybe sometimes youth can be also something which is good because you bring energy. And I think the French people were also maybe a bit tired having elderly presidents, and they wanted the change.
But right now,
they also wanted the change with Nicolas Sarkozy.
But right now,
his profile was quite different from the others.
Right now, in Conway-Mouret, this is a moment that calls for party politics. Come on, he's been in office for 8 years. Does he understand party politics now?
I do not believe so. The image of him being alone, walking alone, maybe indeed it is staged, certainly, but I think this is his position today, and there are so few people around him, and even those who are around him say openly that if he hears, he doesn't listen.